Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Allen. How's it going, man?
Ben, it was an uneventful weekend for me when I have really nothing to update you guys on. I feel like I'm under delivering as one of the two hosts here on this podcast. I'm like, oh, I usually say something witty about my weekend. Got nothing going on. It was raining the entire weekend. I just stayed inside and just watched TV. That was it.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Hey, nothing wrong with having a nice, quiet weekend. I did pretty much the same. We didn't do a whole lot
Nice.
this past weekend, and it was nice. After I feel like if you've been on the back of a couple weeks of travel, or you got a bunch of like errands to do, or in your case, like a busy work weekend, it's nice to have
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, but you also have kids. And so for you to do that, it's like, well, I understand that. It's like, well, what does Garrett have? He's got nothing. He has no responsibility other than work. I mean, that's really other than all it is. But what I was also not happy about the lack of involvement, the lack of action on was the ratings and reviews. And apologies to anyone who can maybe hear the construction outside my window. But um, no ratings and reviews. Nothing on Apple, nothing on Spotify. Let's get those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers. Go to an Apple, you go to the podcast episode and you scroll down to the bottom, 5 stars. Spotify, pretty self-explanatory. You can see the 5 stars on that episode. So please do that. Go check out YouTube. A lot of great interviews there and coming soon. Ben, where do you want to start, man?
Let's start with an athlete that we've talked a lot about over the last couple of weeks, and we just talked about her not running this event potentially at the national meet, and that is Pamela Kosgei, nearly running an NCAA record, running 9:15 in the 3K steeplechase, just nearly less than a second behind Doris Lemengol's NCAA record. Did this performance change your opinion on what we talked about last week? And that was avoid Doris Lemengol at all costs in the 3K steeple.
No, it doesn't change anything. I think Doris Lemengol is going to be just as good, if not better, this year in
Mm-hmm.
the steeplechase. And I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I legitimately think Doris Lemengol can run under 9:10.
10, yeah.
Like I am so scared to say that, but I think it's true. I think she can run under 9:10. I also think Kosgei can also run faster, and I also think Lexi Halliday Lowry will be in the mix as well. So it doesn't really change the fact that the women's steeplechase is just as stacked, and it doesn't change the fact that I think who runs what at the national meet is going to be more advantageous for Pamela Kosgei to run the 10K 5K double. I could see the steeplechase record falling twice this season.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably on the women's side the top heaviest field and or like a group of athletes in NCAA history for an
Yeah,
event, right? I mean,
yeah,
the fact that you're having multiple women who will be probably duking out to break the NCAA record, and one of them might not even run at NCAA's because of how good those other two women are. I don't know if we're ever going to see anything quite like this, where it is just this like they're clearly probably the three best steeplechasers that we've seen in the last couple of years. And I mean, and that's again including Olivia Markosic, who is awesome, Greta Kosgei, who was awesome. But like these women have taken the steeplechase to a completely different level.
yeah. And I can't help but wonder, like, I still feel like there's going to be one more name somehow that sneaks into this mix, and all of a sudden we're just wondering, like, like, is it going to be, one of the new like Kenyan additions, maybe from
Mhm.
like West Virginia? Maybe it's, Leah Geruto. Maybe it's, Brenda Chipchirchir, whoever it is. I still feel like I'm not entirely confident that like this is the only group of three. Maybe there's like someone who's in between, like they're not quite in that group of three, but they're also not quite in that next best tier either.
Yeah, they're not running sub 920, but they're running in the 920s, right?
Right, right, exactly. So, yeah, it's crazy, and yet I think this the shortest conversation we've ever had about a woman running 9:15 in the steeplechase. That's just what we've grown used to.
Yeah, I mean, really, if Kosgei hadn't fallen, like and finished that double that she was on pace for, she's had as good of a like what 3 week span as anybody in the country. I mean, she's been on an absolute roll.
Yeah, I mean she's been phenomenal. Like I'm wondering, I'm like, is this like how many other freshman campaigns
Yeah.
have lived up to this, right? I mean, because there's been freshmen who have won national titles and have run ultra fast times, and like, but this is right up there with among the greats. Like I would argue, this is probably a top 5 freshman campaign, depending on how she finishes this spring season. So
Especially with the consistency, right? And across
yeah.
all three sports, like she's been, yeah, rock solid and lived up to expectations, which were super high coming in, which is a great point. So let's move on and let's go ahead and talk about another woman who is on the roll right now, and that is Chloe Foerster, who completes the double running 407 in the 15, just demolishing that really good field. I had the exact same thoughts as you did in your first thoughts article. I was like, what happened like here? Did just no one else want to run with Foerster? It was super strange, but a dominant victory in 407 there, and then comes back the next day, runs 2 flat in the 800. I think the conversation that we've had about Foerster over the last year has been a perfect evolution of what we see in this kind of athlete. Where hey, she breaks out last year. We're like, all right, she's on the national stage, but we don't expect a lot of her on the national stage this year. Still running very fast, but those expectations are a little bit higher, and she's starting to perform a little bit better at the NCAA level. And now we're seeing another, I think, increase in fitness, which I think, again, will hopefully correlate with an even better finish at NCAA's this spring season. I mean, she just looks so in control of her fitness right now, and it is really exciting to think about what she could do, I think, in the 1500. But I mean, it's 2 flat and the 8 I raises some tantalizing questions as well.
Well, I just don't understand. Going back to what you mentioned, how did she win so easily?
Yeah.
Especially in the 1500 meters, she wins by 7 seconds in her heat, 6 seconds overall. It's not like everyone else was just had an exceptionally poor day. It's just the fields weren't nearly as fast. The top section had Sophia Kennedy, and she ran
Yeah.
414, which don't be wrong, 414 is not a bad time, but for Sophia Kennedy, it's like you think that she could run around 410, 411 maybe. And even that was odd. So you go to the 800 meters, she wins her section by 3 seconds, but Roisin Willis was in the second section running 201. And I'm just like, well, why? I don't understand. But it's great. I do think, as we've mentioned and as you just mentioned, there is a level of certainty. There is a level of we are seeing a little bit more conviction, a little bit more comfort, a little bit more she's more sure of herself, and you can just see
Yep.
it in how she races. And so putting together a weekend double like this, 2 flats, like no joke. It's two
Hmm.
flat mid. It's not like 2 flat 9-9, right?
Yeah.
It's 2 flat mid. And it makes me wonder, I'm like, how much faster does the women's 1500 meters need to be for her to run the 800? Or how much faster in the 800 does she need to be to run that event on the national stage? Because
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, like 2 flat is cooking, and she did it on tired legs.
Yeah. I think if she can break 2, then I think that's your decision, right? And again, she's not that far off of it on tired legs, like you're mentioning. So because I think obviously we've talked about the 800 being loaded, and it is, but the 1500 meter is as well. I mean, in terms of overall depth, I think the 1500 is probably even stronger. I think the 800 is a little bit more top heavy, but if you're talking about, hey, this is what event do you think you have the best shot at being an All-American in? I think it might end up being the 800, especially if she can go a half second quicker. So I don't rule that out. Again, even if she does run the 1500 meters, this 2 flat performance is really makes it really exciting about the possibilities of her finishing much higher in that 1500.
Well, not only that, but I think it also indicates that like her ability to double throughout a weekend, which is
Sure.
very important during the national meet, is
Yep.
is very apparent, and like she can do it, and she can run fast times and still double back and run something fast that requires a lot of speed. And I think that's what this shows. It showed at the national meet, it showed this past weekend. So I'd be encouraged. I'd be really encouraged. But I think, however, with the more entertaining, the more fascinating results of this weekend came again at the Stanford Invite in the 10K, in the men's 10K. Um, you had Evans Kurui running 27:37 to take home the overall win. I believe 11 other men ran under 28 minutes. One
Yeah.
of those men was Stanford's Lex Young running 27:48. There's so many guys that we could talk about, but let's start
Yep.
with Kurui. We'll get to Young. Thoughts on Kurui's win here?
Yeah, the time is super fast, but it's not like super surprising. This is someone who flashed a ton of talent in the past. For him to break 28 was not going to be surprising at all. For him to go 27:37, now that is a little bit faster than probably I expected. But I mean, it just signals the era that we're in where, hey, this is a guy that we've talked about, but it's not like we're talking about him as a national title favorite by any means. But he's shown this much talent that running 27:37 is like, yeah, faster than I expected, but not like I'm stunned by any means.
Does this impact how you view him? Has your opinion of him being an All American changed with this performance?
I think a little bit, right? I think this performance shows that he has more margin for error in terms of decisions that he might make or tactical issues that might arise at the national meet. Like if you're running 27:37, you're at a class of fitness that only a very few men can reach. And so as long as you're not like wearing yourself out and you're showing up to the national meet in good shape and you're not mixing it up and matching every single move and all these things, he can make some mistakes and still easily finish in the top 8. And I think that's what this result shows more than anything.
I don't know if you can make mistakes and still be an All American in this year's field.
Well, I guess I need to couch how I what I'm describing as a mistake. Like for me, a mistake could be, hey, he runs like with a surge one too many times, like, or he runs outside in lane 2 or 3 for a lap or two. Like those are issues, right? But they aren't debilitating, I think, for someone that can run 27:37.
Yeah. I also just think it depends on how the national meet races unfold.
Sure.
So it's a bit of an unfair question, or maybe or critique. Um, I guess you're right. I guess like in the grand scheme of things, like we knew that this guy was aerobically dominant. He was crazy talented. The 10K was probably going to be his best event
Yep.
anyways. So I guess it makes sense from that perspective that he ran as well. Lex Young, however, ran 27:48 in what may be the biggest, most impactful, most important result of the season that we've had so far, just in terms of relative to expectations for
Sure.
someone. This is a guy who obviously him and his brother Leo came into the NCAA with tremendous pedigree, elite all-time pedigree. You had some of the fastest all-time marks in high school history. Obviously, their brother Nico Young, an Olympian, a collegiate megastar in his own right, and but Lex and Leo have had a. It's not a bad start to their collegiate career, but it's been a slow start, a slower start. And Lex had never run under 29 minutes for 10,000 meters prior to this past weekend. He just ran 27:48 in what is unquestionably the best result of his still young career so far. What is your major takeaway from Lex Young running 27:48?
This is boring and people are going to get tired of hearing us say this over the next couple of months, but the most impactful thing is, hey, this is really exciting for the fall for Stanford and for him
Yeah,
and
that's true.
him personally, right? I think obviously it's hard to say. He ran in the mix with so many guys who ran like 27:50 to 28 minutes, right? It's hard to say, all right, he definitely stands out, although he beat a lot of them. He definitely stands out among these guys as potential All-American candidates in the 10K this year. Just like we were talking about with Chloe Foerster, this is his breakout, which is awesome. I think it's shown that he can mix it up with almost anybody in the NCAA from a fitness perspective, which is awesome. This is what we've been waiting to see out of Lex and Leo, right? And for Lex to go ahead and do it, that's awesome. But I don't have a lot of takeaways in terms of what we're going to see from a national perspective this spring. But it does make me very, very excited about what we could see in the fall for this Stanford team that really is going to need him to step up in a big, big way.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you that he ran 27:48?
I think it's like an 8. If you fell asleep
An 8.
and if you fell asleep and didn't see the last like year's performance, I think you would be much lower. But there is those performances, right? And he does have that pedigree, and it's it's not. This is something that you would have expected to see at some point, but there was just no like warning signs to see a 27-48, and that's why I'm pretty high up in my surprise scale.
What else does he need to do this season to be viewed as an All-American favorite?
I think, and he doesn't need to run another 10K. I think he just needs to be competitive in the races that he's running, right? I think
Well,
from a
define competitive. What's competitive?
right. I think either like winning the races that he's expected to win, right, against fields that he should, or whether it's at Big Tens or other races, going toe
ACCs.
to yeah, or sorry, ACCs. Gosh, okay, yeah,
Yeah, I know,
thank you.
right?
Ace at ACCs, just mixing it up with the top, like being right there at the end, whether he's winning or not, whether it's the 5K or 10K, just being there with like a lap to go and putting himself in position to win. That's what I need to see from him to be able to say he's an All-American. I just need to see a couple more consistent performances that show that this level he's fully reached this level.
Okay, that's fair. What do you think he runs in the 5K this season?
All right, 27-48. Let's go 13-21.
I think he runs 13-18, 13-19. So close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Of the remaining guys who ran under 28 minutes, real quick, it was David Malarkey, Northern Arizona, Rogers Caplimo, Iowa State, Will Smith, Gonzaga, Drew Bosley, Northern Arizona, James Lawrence, Loyola of Loyola, Illinois, Timothy Chessenden of Arkansas, Bob Liking, Wisconsin, Dennis Cabruto, Alabama, Muhammad Guled of Utah Valley, and Josephat Meli of Washington State. One of those names who I just listed off, what was one name that stood out to you or one name that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of those names, it's not super surprising. I think the James Lawrence one is the one that stood out to me a little bit. Loyola's had a history of being able to develop these really good distance runners, and I can't remember what was the name of their last guy who ended up running, I think, fairly well at NCAA's in the
Oh my
5K, right?
gosh. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. That's gonna bother me. I will get
Yeah,
back to you. I'll find it.
so that's why Lawrence stands out a little bit. The pedigree of that program in terms of being able to create a star at the national level. 27-54 is super exciting, a big jump in fitness for him. And yeah, I think he's just one of those guys that I'm going to kind of keep under, that is going to be on my radar over the next couple of months, because like a lot of these guys you're talking about, like Caplimo and Cheseden, like, all right, we've mentioned their names before. Goulet and Meli are a little bit new to this level as well, but I'm curious to keep track of Lawrence over the next couple months.
Jason Clayton and Chris Devaney are probably the guys we're thinking of.
That doesn't
No,
sound
still
right.
no.
That doesn't sound
I
right.
can go back further. I think it's like because then you're talking about like 20. I mean, maybe
No,
it's a
it
cross
wasn't
country
that
guy.
far ago. It wasn't that long ago, I don't think.
Oh, now this is gonna bother me. This is
Yeah,
gonna really
you
bother.
I'm gonna start looking.
I'm gonna.
You keep talking.
I was gonna say I did have a name here. I wanted to chat about. I think Drew Bosley, Northern Arizona. I think that's the one. That I think that's the
Yes.
most relatively important of that group. Finishes 6 overall, 27-53. I think we know what his ceiling is, and I think we know that this is not his ceiling. And I think it's important to understand and know that like 27-53, this guy can probably run 27-30s at his prime, maybe even a touch faster. It's just a matter of can he stay healthy for the entire season and can he continue to get better? But at the rate that he's running, he is getting better. He is improving. It's just a matter of will we see that improvement carry all the way through to June? Does he have the turnover to be there in late in races? I think he does. And so let's watch out. Let's be careful of Bosley because right now Bosley's one of the last guys I would really want to be, having to toe the line against, a month or two from now. So
Yeah, and I think we talked about him
We
last
did.
week, right? About
We
hey,
did.
I think I was pretty high on him
You
as
were.
a All American favorite, just based off of what he's done in the past, and I think he's gotten back to a level of fitness that is good enough. So I think who it was well, actually this might not be right. I thought it was Ryan Martins for
Yeah, it is probably Ryan
I
Martin's.
think that's it.
Yeah.
He was 29th at NCAA's in cross in
Yeah,
2022. So I
that might
think
be what
that's
it
what I'm
was.
referring to.
Yeah, because he was at Nebraska, and then they bring it because Loyola does this where they'll go in the transfer portal and they clearly scout these guys. They
Yes, very
clearly
well.
scout these guys extremely well and say like, hey, we have one or two scholarships that we're going to go all in on, and a guy that's like maybe not heavily touted, but we know the upside is there and we can see it. And they do it time and time again, whether it's Ryan Martins, whether it's Chris Devaney, whether it's now James Lawrence, and they do exceptionally well with these grad transfers. So yeah, big fan of what they're doing there.
Absolutely. Let's go to the women's side in the 10K. And that leads us to Diana Cherotich of Oregon, who makes NCAA debut in 10K and runs 31:45 NCAA 9 all time. Behind her, you had Peyton Noe, 31:59, Juliet Cherabet, 32:02, and Jaden Keeler, 32:08. So for someone that did not know a lot about Cherotich coming in to the NCAA. Obviously, she had very strong times coming in. I think she'd run 8:56 and 15:01
Yep.
before. So to run 31:45 is not stunning. But how does this change your opinion of her, or does it change your opinion of her at all after this performance?
I'm worried that I'm going to conflict myself for what I said in the article, but I don't know if it does change anything. I think it's more important to look at this from like a macro perspective
Sure.
of this time's great. I'm sure she's going to run well and she'll be an All American. But in the long run, it's important to recognize that like Oregon now probably has a true long distance superstar who, over the next few years, for the remainder of Lemongall's eligibility and for the remainder of Pamela Kosgei's eligibility, that they're going to have one of those names who will likely be, or maybe could be, in that same mix. Maybe she's still a little bit of a step behind those two women, but she's probably, if she's not at that tier, then she's probably the next tier below. And I think that's what's important to note. And like you said, I think the important takeaway here is cross country. Like Oregon now has a true star who can be top 5 in the NCAA. Cherubet can probably be top 10, top
Mm-hmm.
15. In fact, we know she can. Then you wonder, like, okay, who else is going to be coming back? Who else do they add? Because surely this is not the only woman who Oregon adds this year. They will add someone else, and they will continue to get better and get better. So I don't know if it necessarily changes my opinion of her, of what I thought she could do, and it's more so because the rest of the NCAA in the longer distances is so stacked. So that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, I think what is exciting about this is it's almost honestly similar to the Lex Young conversation of, hey, we know she's going to be in the mix, right, with the best in the country this year. She's going to get the opportunity to race against the best in the country at NCAA's. I mean, assuming that she makes it, which after you run 31:45, as long as you're healthy, we're assuming she's going to make it. And I think that's just exciting, right? She's going to get that experience. We're going to see how she does going head to head against maybe a Pamela Kosgei in the 10K. And I think that'll be a lot of fun to see. And to your point, Oregon's been just desperately needing this kind of runner, right? To kind of round out their cross country lineup, but just their track lineup as well. They are so loaded in the middle distances that now you add in someone like Cherotich who can just provide you that immediate 5K, 10K value, not taking away points from other Oregon athletes. You're not taking
Mm-hmm.
away any spots. It's another way for them to score points, which I think is massive for them. And then, I mean, not to get lost in all this mix. I mean, Cherubit was one of the, I think, best athletes in the transfer portal. Just
Yep.
like with what she's already done, her flexibility from event to event, she can do everything so well. and clearly proves that value once again. If she ends up being more of a 5K, 10K runner for Oregon, because they're just, again, they have plenty of middle distance talent, then she's, again, going to give that and that other just stud to build a very strong 5K, 10K group around.
I agree, and that's what I think. This is a scary realization of like, hey, it's Cherotich, it's Cherobit, but really the more important thing is that like we know this is not it.
Right.
We know this is not it, and that's I think the scariest part. So yeah, great run. I don't think it's super surprising. Peyton Noe continues to be who are you higher on right now? Peyton Noe runs 31:59. Who's the other name do you think I'm going to say?
You're going to say Grace Hartman?
No. I mean, I guess we could throw her in there, but who's the other name? Because if it's not Chris Hartman, who's the other?
Gosh, I've been doing so badly at these.
Yeah, you have
pop-up quizzes lately.
Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Who was relevant this past winter?
Garrett, you got to stop doing this to me. My
Dude, this
dad
is
brain
not. This is again. It's not.
Is killing me. All right, give me a second. Give me a second. Let me look at lists here. Here we go.
She's also
Sophia Kennedy.
There you go. Yeah, got it. Yes, Sophia Kennedy. Who are you higher on, Sophia Kennedy or Peyton Noe?
Oh, good question. Good question. From so when you say higher, like, is it, hey, what are they, like, how many possible championships did they win? Is it like what level did they reach?
Whose ceiling will be the highest by the time they finish their collegiate career?
I think it's Noe, actually, in terms of top end ceiling, just because I think she has like zero fear. She just puts herself in those situations more often, which again, which is why I asked the question, right? Like, is it, how are we measuring this? Because I think Kennedy's probably the safer bet in a lot of ways, because I just think she runs a little bit more under control. But I think Noe's going to push the pedal to the floor, and there's going to be some really exciting performances because of that.
Yeah, I don't have a good like answer for any of those questions regarding criteria, because if everything was so structured, then this podcast wouldn't be fun. So right. Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to the next one. All right, so let's talk about staying at Stanford invite. Jenna Hutchins, 5K, 15:16. This is great. It's a great result. I was high on Hutchins after she came off a winter season where you go, oh, wow, she ran 8:52 in the 3K and 15:31 in the 5K. She looked really good despite being injured at the tail end of the cross-country season. And I thought, well, she's going to have a pretty high ceiling. Maybe she'll run pretty well. 15:16 still surpasses my expectations. What is your major takeaway from this?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, ran a good DMR leg too, right? Yep. To help BYU win the DMR at the national championships. Yeah, I think the takeaway here, there isn't that much. I wish I could give you more, but she's just a little bit fitter than expected. I think I think we both probably expected a 15-2 performance, not a 15-1 performance, right? And so, hey, she's maybe 10 seconds faster than probably our expectations. That's awesome. How does that translate moving forward? I think we're going to still need to see more, right? Does this mean, hey, she's firmly in the All-American picture? I think so. But
she's in the conversation.
Yeah, but it's like, all right, where in that conversation is she at this point? That's really hard to tell, because we're going to see a lot of women run under 15:20 this year, and how she matches up against them, again, in a field where she didn't go up against some of the best in the country at Stanford. It's really hard to gauge exactly where she stacks up in the NCAA picture as a whole, but still a great sign. Like, this is awesome. We've talked for years about the limit, like just the unlimited upside that she really has based off of her high school pedigree, being in a BYU program that's great at getting the most out of your talent. And it seems like she's getting a lot closer to that ceiling.
I agree. I think the upside, the potential, the raw talent, the pedigree It's beginning to come out a little bit more. Like you keep her healthy, you get a few seasons consistently under her belt. Like she's going to be a problem, and I think we've said this. We have said this. Um, how fast does she run the 10K? And is this result more impact her All American chances in the 5K or her All American chances in the 10K?
I like that question. I think 10K, because I think the 10K is probably going to be ultimately where she probably has the best chance
Yep.
at being an All-American. So this fitness is most helpful for there. As far as what she ends up running, I think like just under 32 is probably where I would put her, 31.55 or something like that.
So, what's her percent chance of being an All American in the 10K right now? Right now.
I think right now it's like a 60% chance. I would give her a little better than a coin flip.
Yeah, I'd say about 55 is what I would have said. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, great result. I think it allows her to enter the All American conversation. Where in the All American conversation she lies still needs
Sure.
to be decided later this season. So, all right, let's move off of Jenna Hutchins. Steeplechase, we were, based on the performance list, supposed to have a Matthew Kosgei of New Mexico versus James Corrigan, the BYU Olympian. Uh, we were supposed to have a battle between those two in the steeplechase. We did not get that. Corrigan ran 13:27 in the 5K, but we did get a very tight matchup. New Mexico's Matthew Kosgei runs 8:22 to narrowly defeat Kentucky's Collins Kipngok of also running 8:22. I think, yeah, I was going to say, so for those who can't see, Ben's just shaking his head, shrugging his shoulders, being like, eh. Like, which I think I'm going to ask you, what are you or gesturing that towards? What is that gesture towards?
Well, so honestly, it's just more disbelief. Like, all right, Matthew Kosgei runs 8:22. That's sure. That's for someone who's run 8:17 before. It's really good to see, like, all right, he can run very close to that this early in the
Right.
season. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like that says, all right, James Corrigan, you're going to have your absolute hands full this season from
Yes, he
Matthew
is.
Kosgei. Like that's going to be a fantastic matchup. The reason I was more shaking my head is like Collins, Kipngok, where like, the All American and the top end of the steeplechase just got insanely more difficult to compete in, because if you have this guy who just comes in and runs 8:22 and goes toe to toe with Matthew Kosgei, he's not running
Yep.
8:22 on his own in a time
Nope.
trial atmosphere. He's running with an 8:17 guy and looking every bit as good as him. That's the real, like, the Kipngok performance is probably the most impactful of all the performances that we saw this weekend, because this just raises his stock to a level that we did not anticipate, and it changes the dynamics of the steeplechase completely. It's not a two-man race. It's a three-man race, and now it's going to be much more difficult to be an All-American, because I mean, as long as he stays healthy and this isn't a fluke, he's taken one of those spots.
Well, what if I told you I think Nathan Mountain is back?
I
You're not a Nathan Mountain guy?
I like him, but I don't know if he.
No, you don't like him enough, though, Ben.
I don't know if I like him enough to put him in this three-man like title conversation. Like this
Really?
is these guys are gonna run like
He's run 8:20.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are going to run 8:15 or faster, potentially, I think. If they're all in the same race, they're all going to run insanely fast. And I just don't know if Mountain can do that. I think he can run 8:20, but I don't know if
Which he
can
has.
Yeah.
Which, let me double check, because didn't he run faster? No, he didn't. Okay, I'm not ready to dismiss Mountain yet. I'm not ready to say that he's gonna be in the mix with Corrigan yet, but I'm not ready to dismiss him either.
But I think that's my point. Is I think Kosgei and Kipngok, I think, can race with Corrigan, and I don't think Mountain can, and that's where the distinction is. Now, am I picking anybody against Corrigan? Not necessarily, but I think there's three that are in a different tier.
I don't know if I'm ready to say that yet.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm not ready to dismiss Mountain yet. I think it's going to be in The next 2 to 3 weeks, it's going to be like in late April. Mountain opens up with a steeplechase at like a good meet, but not a crazy good meet like he did last year at Virginia Challenge, I
Yeah.
believe. And he's going to run a crazy good time. And they're going to be like, whoa, I didn't really mean what I said about that, like.
I mean, what do you think he's going to run? I think he'll run like
he could,
8:26 or 25
I
or
think he
something.
could. I think he could. No, he's run 8:20. He ran 8:20.
I know,
last
but
year.
like that. When did he run that 8:20?
I mean, now
What
you're
part of
just
the
asking.
season?
That time was run at the Virginia Challenge in mid to late April of last year.
All right, there you go. Point
So
to you there.
I think. Well, yeah, he ran that, and then also I questioned to figure out like when did he run the other? Did he run any other time? He ran 8:21 at the Olympic trials as well.
Okay, that's what I was remembering. That's what I thought was his PR.
Yeah, he ran 8:21 at the Olympic trials. I think he can run 8:17 this year. And I think if you run 8:17, you're in the mix.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So I also think he's one of the more complete guys in that field. Not the point. Kipngok. And here's the thing with Kipngok. He had run 8:29 in the steeple per his World Athletics profile. And like he had been good in the NCAA over the last 2 seasons, but he wasn't like amazing by any means.
Exactly.
So for him to be like, it's like, okay, well, he was already a great steeplechaser. It's like, okay, fine. Then maybe he matches his PR. Maybe he runs a couple seconds faster. To run 7 seconds faster than your steeplechase PR against a legitimate national title threat in Matthew Kosgei is important. And I think it's important to catch there. So impressive result. Isaac Hendegren of BYU, 8:32. Landon Heemeyer, 8:34, also of BYU. Handful of guys running under 8:40. Have you ever gotten to a point where we thought we wouldn't talk about guys running under 8:35 in the steeple?
No, I mean, I was pretty excited about what we saw from the Eastern Kentucky steeplechaser, whose name is, again, escaping me because I
Christian
clearly
Nimroth.
have Christian Nimroth, who I mean, ran, 8:32, 8:33 at Raleigh, and
Something
I
like
was pretty – I still think he's probably one of the best top 8, top 10 steeplechasers in the country, but we could end up having a lot of men running those times, and it's going to be a lot harder to justify that belief here soon.
Yeah. How many men? You know what? That's an unfair question. I think you still need to wait on that. So, all right, I'm going to move off of the steeplechase, and the last major headline that we need to cover is the men's 800 meters at the Florida Relays. Tinoda Matsatsa of Georgetown runs 1:45.05. Did you already read the First Thoughts article on this?
I did, yes.
Okay, that doesn't even crack the top 25 all time.
I know that was surprising. I was like, how is that even possible to run nearly 144 and you're not in the top 25?
Apparently you need to be under 145 to crack the all-time top 25 list.
Crazy.
Per USTF CCCA. Runs 1:45.05. Handel Robon 1:45.15, I believe, or 1:6 maybe. A great PR from him. He comes back after redshirting, I believe, this past winter. Kamarfa Carson 1:45.99 of Texas A&M, whereas Sim Whitmarsh of Texas A&M and Ryan Maceman of Florida both running 1:46.76. Did I get that right?
Yes,
so
you're right.
Talented. Oh my god. Anyway,
you have all the memory that I don't have right now.
Yeah, but guess what? If I could only apply that to like finance or like the sciences, I would be unstoppable. But no, track and field. Anyways, let's quickly go through Matsatsa. Does this performance change anything?
No.
Okay, cool. Let's move off of Matsatsa. Impressive, great. Does not change anything. Robon running a PR. Didn't really know what he was going to do after a redshirt in the indoor track season. Are you willing to put him in the same conversation as Matsatsa, McCarthy, Erickson, and Hassan?
Not quite.
Why?
So it's funny because you and I had talked about him offline, I think after our last podcast episode, of being like, hey, like, he had started off his career so well. It looked like he was going to be one of the guys in the NCAA when it came to the 800 meters. And he had fallen off a little bit, right? And now he's back, which is great, and clearly back at a fitness level that he's never been at before, which is awesome. I am a little hesitant about saying, all right, you've done one great performance, and all of a sudden you're stacking up with guys who have been running really well for the last 3 months. and running like not exactly the same times, but like equivalent times, not that far off. So if he runs one more race like this, I'm ready to put him in this conversation. This isn't like a high barrier to entry for him. Like it's he just has to clear this level and run like 146 or faster one more time and not and like be competitive in that race. And I'm
That's a
there.
lot to ask, though. Still,
I mean, for someone who just ran 145 and finished second to Tinoda Matsatsa, I think that's not a huge, a super high
okay,
bar.
okay. All right. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not. You're right. It's not a crazy high bar, but running under 146 twice in the same season, like, did anyone even do
well,
that?
I'm not even saying he needs to run under 146. I just said 146.
Oh, so it could be like 146.99.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer like if he wins that race, then sure.
Sure. Okay.
I
Okay.
again,
Okay.
I'm not trying to say, hey, you have to run another 145. Like, no, that I just wanted to see you mix it up, win a few races, like win a race or two. Like that's I'm not. I'm ready to put him in there. I'm just not doing it yet.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I can't wait for our new project to reflect what our writers think. So
Yeah, yeah, that's
not
true.
not the rankings. Okay. Off of Robon, Kamarfa Carson, 145.99. He seems to do really well in like these really competitive
Yes.
fields. For whatever reason, he also just seems to be way better on the outdoor oval.
Yep.
He was an All American last spring, back end All American. Does this really change
No,
anything?
no. I think the more interesting result is his teammate
Yeah.
Sam Whitmarsh. A little underwhelming. I thought he was going to break out in a bigger way once he hit the outdoor oval. He's a big, taller guy. Running on the outdoor track is always going to be more of an advantage for him than running on the indoor track. And I'm left a little cold with this performance, to be honest. I really thought he was going to run 145 this weekend, and we just did not see that. So again, if your bad day is running 146.76, totally fine. I'm not that worried about him, but I would like to see a faster performance than this at some point this year.
Yeah, I'm split, and I explained this in our first thoughts article, which is, hey, on one hand, this is a guy who did not have a great winter campaign outside of winning the SEC title, which was great, but he had not run on faster than 147 this past winter. Starts his season, his outdoor track season, by with a pretty unexciting 148 mark, or maybe even 149, I forget, 148 at the beginning of the season, and then runs 146 now, which is a step in the right direction and a fast time, and it's a competitive mark, but it's also not. It's clear that he's not at his 144 form. Like, he's just not. And he was one of the aggressors. Like, he went with the pacer. Like, he was one of the aggressors in this Florida relays race. So something to consider there. Ryan Maceman, however, Florida, comes out of nowhere,
Yeah.
had a just okay winter campaign. It wasn't amazing by any means. Has run 148, 149 for the last couple of seasons here. Ran a pair of 147s, peaked perfectly at the NCAA East Regional Championships last spring. Did not make it out of the East Regional Championships, but ran a pair of 147s. But after running this past winter 149, 148, and 150 in that order, he runs 146.76. I thought it was surprising that he got into the hot heat initially.
Yeah.
And then you look and see that he runs 146.76 to place fourth, barely, essentially tying with Sam Whitmarsh there. Florida clearly knew something that we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that was, because on paper you're like, oh, he's good, he's not amazing. What else do you need to see from Maceman to say that he's going to be a national qualifying lock?
So again, the benefit of having the Florida relays on your home track is and being set up by your coaching staff is this exact scenario, right? So good for him and good for them for like putting him in there when I'm sure
Yep.
they could have. I'm sure they got a little bit of backlash from other coaches about, hey, my guy deserves a spot more, and clearly Maceman proved that he was absolutely worthy of this position. Now, as far as what he needs to do to be a national title lock or national qualifier lock. Honestly, I think it comes down to SECs in a lot of ways, right? Hey, how does
Mm.
he handle the rounds of SECs? I think if he makes it through the rounds, I think that honestly, I think that makes me feel good enough about him. The SEC's loaded with 800-meter talent. I think if he gets 3 rounds, looks competent in the finals, I think that's really, I think, all I need to see.
I'm looking to figure out where the East and the East Championships are. East regional meet. It's in Jacksonville, Florida,
North
University of
Florida
North
again.
Florida. Yeah, North
Yeah.
Florida again. Where did you compete
North
for?
Florida.
It was North Florida. Okay.
Yeah.
So hey, like that Florida humidity, Florida heat could benefit him. So I guess we'll
Yep.
see on that round. But all right, a few quick notes, results that were strong, but maybe we don't have the time to kind of deep dive into. North Florida's Smila Colby runs 2:01 to get a win at the Florida Relays. Abel Tefrod runs 1:46 for 800 meters to earn a comfortable win at George Mason. Don't know why he wasn't part of the Florida Relays. Like that didn't.
Yeah, that's like, that screamed to me, hey, we don't need to spend budget on you going to Florida. We know you're going to run something fast. We're going to let Matsatsa take center stage. Like that's what
I
I
guess.
took from that.
I guess I won't argue. Bradley's Jack Kroll runs 3:40 to barely hold off California's Garrett McQuitty. Bradley, nice weekend at Stanford Invite, by the way. They had their guy won the top heat of the men's 800 in 150 flat, but then their guy in the third heat, Matthew Burnett, ran the fastest overall time in 149.31. They had the hot heat winner and the overall time winner, which I thought was impressive. And then Portland's Matt Strangio, 13:24 in the 5K, leads a handful of other men under 13:30. Which performance here did you want to highlight?
I think the Jack Kroll one, probably, because these other ones, it's like, all right, these all these athletes have been running fairly well over the last either couple months or last year. Like Strangio running 13:24, like, yeah, this is, we know he's capable of it. Tefra coming off of a mile national title, 146 seems reasonable. Smila Colby, after a very good NCAA's performances in the 800, running 201, not surprising. I think for Kroll, this is interesting because he becomes someone to keep an eye on. Now 340 is not going to be fast enough to be able to compete with the best in the NCAA, but the fact that he took home the win, I think is good to see. And I think he becomes interesting. He becomes a name that gets into some faster heats later on in the season, and thus becomes a lot more interesting to watch because, hey, if he mixes it up against a field that's running 335, then all of a sudden he's someone that could realistically be in that like national conversation of making it to national meet.
I agree. I like Kroll a lot. I think he's very underrated. Tactically sound, consistent, showed a lot of upside, at least in his talent this past winter. I like Kroll a lot. Quick shout out to Matt Strangio. Tragically, his father passed away at the indoor national meet, it appears. And then he comes out and gets a really cool win.
Yeah.
And so, you root for him. So sorry for his loss. Prayers out to him. But just really cool to see him kind of get that win despite being separated from just a few weeks from a personal tragedy. So, but on that note, I do think we are all wrapped for today. Did I miss anything?
No, I think we hit on all the major performances. Another week of just insane, just an insane quality and quantity of performances. It really never gets old to see
No.
our rundowns filled with these many awesome performances. So I'm excited for the rest of the year.
Excited, definitely for sure. We've got, I think, what's this upcoming week? It's going to be Duke Invitational, I think, is probably the big one. Maybe Bison Outdoor Classic at Bucknell. And then we all prepare for Brian Clay. And that's going to be the big one. So stay tuned. Go make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we pretend to eventually put up more interviews there. But Ben, that is all I've got.
All right, Garrett. Well, until next week, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.